On today's episode, who should the Montreal Canadiens pick at 5th overall? We'll break that down in detail on today's episode of Locked On NHL Prospects.
You are Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this podcast, we break down everything prospects related for you 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. I'm Hadi, Kalakeche, co-host of the podcast and director of North American Scouting for Dobber Prospects, among other things. And on today's show, I'll be breaking down for you which pick would make the most sense for the Habs at 5th overall. The Montreal Canadiens are in a very particular position at 5th overall here with a ton of options to look at. So in our first segment, we'll look at the ideal options, which would be the best scenarios essentially for the Canadiens. In our second segment, we'll look at the other options at forward specifically. And in our third segment, we'll look at the wild card picks, some picks that are a bit off the board or a bit outside of what the Montreal Canadiens would likely be targeting, but that could be picks on draft day. Before we get into any of that, today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL at checkout for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe as usual. Leave us a comment letting us know what you think of the episode, what you think of the options the Habs have here at 5th overall, and a lot more down below. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, please leave us a rate and review, and make sure to make us your first listen of the day. So let's get things started right away here with the ideal targets. And I've highlighted two for you here that would be ideal scenarios for the Montreal Canadiens if they slip at 5th overall. The first one, first and foremost, is a bit more realistic than the second, and I'll get into why in just a second. But to start things off, we'll start off with Cayden Lindstrom, the 6'4", 215-pound center who played for the Medicine Hat Tigers in the WHL this season. Pretty simply, he's been money this year when he hasn't been injured. Obviously, the injuries are, I would say, a concern perhaps, but not to the level of, for example, an Adam Jiricek or an Aron Kiviharju, who missed a lot of time with injuries to key parts of their bodies. With Cayden Lindstrom, it was a hand surgery that he required, and he had some nagging back problems here and there, but nothing that should keep him from reaching his full potential at the NHL level. We'll get into the profile here first and foremost with Lindstrom. As I mentioned, he's a big guy, 6'4", 216. He plays with a lot of physicality, but he's not a player that exclusively relies on strength. He's able to leverage mechanics. He's able to push off of bodies, establish body positioning first before getting to the puck. All the little details I look for bigger prospects who with bigger forwards, usually they take a bit more time to develop into their full potential. This is something that we've tracked historically at Dobber Prospects. The bigger end of forwards and the smaller end of forwards usually take a bit more time, 3, 4, 5 years to hit their potential. And they predict the same thing for Cayden Lindstrom, but I think when everything is said and done, we might be talking about one of the highest upside prospects in the 2024 NHL draft outside of Macklin Celebrini. Not just in terms of the point totals, which could be sky high. I could see Cayden Lindstrom develop into a point per game, big, strong center, big, strong first line center. But on top of that, just the overall impact in the game. Like I said, he's physical, but he's also a pest. He gets under your skin. Off the ice, he's a hard worker, a great person by all accounts. And just a player you want in your organization. He fits exactly what Montreal looks for in terms of character, size, and skill. So in terms of ideal targets, I could very well see Cayden Lindstrom be the pick at 5th overall if he is available. There's a small chance that he's picked in the top 4, but if he's available at 5, I don't think the Habs will think twice about it. Cayden Lindstrom's exactly down their alley in terms of everything they look for. The other option here at 5th overall is a bit less likely, but I still need to mention it because it's an ideal scenario. He's the 2nd overall pick on Sebastian and I's rankings for the 2024 NHL Draft, and it's quick, skilled winger Ivan Demidov from the MHL. He played for SKA 1946, which is SKA St. Petersburg's under 20 MHL league team, basically, and to put it shortly, he's the most skilled prospect in this draft. In terms of pure dynamic skill, I don't even think Macklin Celebrini reaches the level of dynamism and pure creativity and skill that Demidov brings to the game. He has a 10 grade handling skill. He's the best stick handler in this draft by a decent margin. And the creativity with which he solves problems is outside of this world. I mean, this is a prospect who chains together dekes extremely well, who gets himself out of tight quarters and difficult scenarios with the most inventive and unpredictable things you'll ever expect. And that level of creativity and inventiveness for me just separates him at the top of this draft. And this is a prospect who, if he develops well, if everything goes well, we're talking about 100, 110 point plus prospect. This is a very, very skilled player. Now, he's got some deficiencies regarding his skating. He is a pretty elusive player. He's a pretty dynamic player. He's able to escape tight quarter scenarios really well. I just think that he could develop more speed. This is a prospect who could reach a higher gear in terms of pure speed, in terms of pure acceleration. He uses a lot of 10 and 2 skating where his feet kind of splay out, which is good in order to, again, escape tight scenarios. It's not as good for building speed, but honestly, he gets away with it most of the time in the MHL. I'm just curious to see if he's able to kind of uplift that to a KHL level skill and then to an NHL level skill. But the hand's already at an NHL level. He could be the best stick handler in the NHL when all is said and done. The best stick handler we've seen since Patrick Kane. And for me, Demidov is the closest thing we've seen to Pavel Datsyuk since Pavel Datsyuk. Obviously, Pavel Datsyuk is a unicorn. A player like this comes around once in a lifetime. But for me, what makes Demidov so interesting, what separates him, for example, from a Matvei Michkov from a couple of years ago, from last year rather, who slipped to 7th overall to the Philadelphia Flyers, is that with Demidov, first and foremost, the Russian factor isn't as scary. Demidov has been stuck in the MHL pretty much the whole season, not because of a lack of skill, not because of the fact that he's perhaps not ready for the KHL or for pro minutes. That's not the issue at all. He was absolutely dominating the MHL, and it wasn't even fair. Like, he was the best player in the MHL by a decent margin. The reason why he was in the MHL the entire season is because he already refused to sign an extension in Russia. He's a player who his contract expires in 2025, and he's already made clear that he doesn't want to play in Russia past that point. So, it's kind of, I would say, a punishment. But again, all of this is kind of purported. I just don't see any other reason why he would be stuck in the MHL. There's nothing about his skill or his dynamism or his level overall that says that he's not ready for pro minutes. On top of that, Demidov has the habits that Michkov doesn't, and still doesn't to this day. He's a player who moves off the wall really well. He's not necessarily stuck at the wall waiting for pucks so he can break them out. He creates his own puck touches rather than relying on his teammates to create them for him. And on top of that, he's a good defensive player. He gets back. He puts in energy. He's pretty intelligent when it comes to understanding the defensive game. It's just the effort level's waning, and he's still figuring out when to go, when not to go. But when he gets involved, he does a really good job. I've seen him defend a rush on the penalty kill. I've seen him, close gaps really well and kind of identify his checks really well. So I think he has the understanding. He just doesn't have the processing that's high enough in order to get him to a level where he's one of the best defensive players. But he understands the game pretty well. It's just about effort, engagement, all that good stuff. But I think that'll come with time. I wouldn't be too worried about Demidov's defensive game. Whereas with Michkov, it was more of a situation of how much can you live with. With Demidov, is okay. His defensive game's average. He's not going to be necessarily a liability. And on top of that, he's going to give you really good habits in transition, really good offensive zone habits, creating his own puck touches. Skilling the pants off of everyone on every shift. I think this should be by far the best option for the Habs if he's available at 5. I'd be shocked because I think teams definitely do their homework and they'll be aware of the situation with Demidov and how likely he is to come over. But again, this is an issue with the Russian factor. Like, when's the last time we've seen a top pick from Russia not make his way over? I can't name you the last one. It's been ages. So, the only one I can point to that came over and didn't do a good job would be obviously Nail Yakupov. But outside of that, he came over. So I don't think the issue is, Russian prospects coming over. So I don't think Habs fans should be worried if Demidov's available at 5 and he's a pick for Montreal. And I think that would be the smartest thing they could do if he is available at 5, if teams take the bait on the Russian factor issue, because again, this is the most skilled prospect in this draft, and overall, he has the ability to score point after point after point in the NHL if he's developed properly. And Montreal has a great development system with Adam Nicholas in there, so I think they do a really good job taking Demidov to the next level and making him ready for the NHL, which should be, I'd say, around 2026, 2027 at most, which would be about the same timeline as maybe even earlier than Cayden Lindstrom. So for me, it's a no-brainer with Demidov. He's a really good pick at 5 if he's available. But again, I'd be very surprised. Chicago's eyeing him. I'm pretty sure that Columbus is eyeing him. Anaheim's been purported to be looking for right shot players, either at forward or on D, but even that's not 100% confirmed. I'd be really shocked if Demidov's available at 5. But if he is, I think the Habs should jump on that opportunity. That wraps it up for our first segment. We'll get into the more realistic picks. at forward for Montreal. We'll look at 3 forwards in particular from the CHL. We'll get into that in just a second, but just a quick word from our sponsors, Policygenius, first and foremost. Life insurance is such an important safety net for you and your family. And that's why Policygenius is really useful in situations where you're looking for the best life insurance policy for you and the people you love. Things are unpredictable, and Policygenius is a country's leading online insurance marketplace. So they help you choose the right insurance company for you. With Policygenius, you can find life insurance policies that start out at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options are 100% online as well and help you avoid unnecessary medical exams and all that stuff. So Policygenius helps you easily compare your options from America's top insurance in just a few clicks. Their award-winning agents can even walk you through the whole process step by step. So it's really simple, really easy, and no hassle. So get peace of mind by finding the right life insurance policy with Policygenius. Head to policygenius.com or click the link in the description below to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com. Alrighty, so let's move on to our second segment. We'll talk about the more realistic options at forward here for the Montreal Canadiens at 5th overall. Now, they've already been purported to be looking for a forward in this draft, and there are 3 good options, in my opinion, at 5. We'll start off with, I think, the best option of the 3 realistic ones if Lindstrom and Demidov are gone, and it's going to be Tij Iginla of the Kelowna Rockets in the WHL. He's listed at average size, but he plays above his size. He's got the intensity, the dynamism, the purpose in his game, the awareness. There's so much to love with the way that he creates offense. He's already the best board battler in this draft. He's better than Macklin Celebrini at that. Getting off the boards, winning puck battles, getting into open ice, finding scenarios where he can dominate with his physicality, his intensity, and his hands. He's just really, really good at it. On top of that, he's a really good off-puck mover to find space in the offensive zone. He always scores goals from in tight. He's always able to lift the puck up in tight quarters around the net. He's lethal from around the net and always hits the right pockets of the right timing in the offensive zone. On top of that, he's got a really good mid-range risker. He didn't score 47 goals in 60 games this season in the WHL for nothing. He's really good at scoring, but he's not a one-trick pony. He's not just a goal scorer and board battler. He's a really good playmaker. He's incredibly smart. I love the awareness. I love the engagement, and again, the intensity. He's going to outwork everyone on the ice, night in and night out. Pedal to the metal. I love this kid. And he's got so much to his game that's really projectable. And sometimes I watch him, and it's hard to separate him and his dad, just because his dad played that same kind of hard-nosed, physical, goal-scoring game. But I think that Tij Iginla is definitely a muted version of Jarome Iginla. I'd be really, really, really surprised if he reaches the level of his dad. I mean, his dad's a Hall of Famer. It's not an easy level to reach. It's not an easy bar to reach. And I don't think it's fair to him either to compare him to his dad. They're different players. But overall, I think that Jarome Iginla, wow, I just did it. Tij Iginla brings so much to the game in so many different scenarios, especially offensively. I think the one thing that he needs to work on is actually taking his foot off the pedal at times. Sometimes he'll just overskate his lanes fully on the back check, just trying to outwork everyone, get back and hustle. He actually misses an opportunity to slow down and get in the right lane in order to block a pass, that kind of thing. So it's an issue of being over-engaged at times, which is actually more fixable than taking a player who doesn't really engage and teaching them to. It's kind of a habits thing. Old habits die hard. I'd rather have a player who's going full pedal than a player who you have to urge to put in more work. It's not ideal. But yeah, Tij Iginla has the character, he has the grit, he's got the physicality, he's got the skill that the Montreal Canadiens are looking for. And for me, it's just he fits the identity so well that I'd be extremely surprised if Montreal goes a different route at forward than Tij Iginla. In terms of the forwards available, I think he's the best fit outside of the 2 that we mentioned in our first segment, Lindstrom and Demidov. I think that Tij Iginla is the next best thing to Cayden Lindstrom when it comes to fit with Montreal. He just fits exactly what they're looking for. He fits the circumstances that they're trying to build in their top 6, and I think that Tij Iginla is a sure thing for a top 6. I'd be really, really shocked if he doesn't make a top 6 because he's got such an NHL translatable game and just so much to love about him. And NHL coaches are going to love him and are going to give him chances in the top 6, whether he's skilled enough to do it or not, and he's already skilled. So there's a lot to work with here. The other option is Berkly Catton. He's an undersized, well, we say undersized, he's 5'11", but he's not a physical guy, so I do consider him undersized. 5'11", 168 pounds, doesn't play with a physical edge, but he's one of the best puck carriers, transition drivers in this draft. He's so good at getting the puck from blue line to blue line, setting up in the offensive zone and creating chances from there. He's just, I mean, the acceleration, I think, is the best in this draft. The ability to separate from opponents in 10 feet of ice is ridiculous. He can just split away from you before you know it. I don't think his top speed is the most high end, but on 10 feet, you're not beating him. He's going to get past you. He's going to separate from you. And separation ability is what I'm looking for an NHL player, right? You want a player who's just able to separate and create space for himself. Berkly Catton is more than capable of doing that in transition. He's not the speediest player, but he manipulates speed extremely well. He slows down, speeds up, works really well like that. He's got a wicked shot. I love his in-stride snapshot. It's one of his best tools. Great playmaking as well. He scored over 100 points this season in 68 games for Spokane in the WHL. Just a magnificent offensive creator. I think his defensive game needs work, definitely. His physical game isn't much to write home about, and I don't even think he can get it to a high level. But if the Montreal Canadiens are looking for a pure skill guy, at 5th overall, with Lindstrom gone, with Demidov gone, with Celebrini gone, I think he's the next best thing in terms of pure points. I still think Tij Iginla is a better fit and a better pick at 5th overall, but I still think that they can't go wrong with Berkly Catton if they go that route. I'd be surprised if they do, but I did need to give you the report on him because he's a really good player and would be a great pick at 5. The next forward on our list here is Beckett Sennecke of the Oshawa Generals in the OHL. Beckett Sennecke, it took me some time to grow on him. We already did our scouting report on him, Sebastian and I, a couple weeks ago, where we said that he's probably kind of a 12 to 18 pick, a player that we'd pick in that range. I've kind of started to get more and more comfortable with the idea of Montreal picking him at 5, and I'll tell you why. He's a pure improviser, right? So this is a player who gets a puck, transitions it up, no set plan, but does exactly what he needs to do in order to get past defenders. Every time a defender reacts to his move, he reacts in return to an opposite move that puts the defender on his heels. His handling skill is high end, which gels so well with that improvisational ability. That's a real standout with Beckett Sennecke. You never know what he's going to do when he gets the puck because he doesn't know what he's going to do heading into the transition scenario, right? And on the flip side of that, I also think that Beckett Sennecke's game kind of steps up when the stakes get high. We saw him play better at the U18 Worlds when he was put in that situation. We saw him up his game massively in the OHL playoffs, and that's really when I started being more and more comfortable with the idea of Montreal picking him at 5 and with him being a 5 to 10 range prospect, is that Beckett Sennecke is clutch, and that's something that is an intangible that can really bring you far in the NHL. If you step up in big games, NHL coaches, NHL GMs notice. They put you on the ice in those scenarios. You get overtime scenarios. You get late minute, third period scenarios. You get those situations to continue to prove the fact that you're able to step it up in big games. I think Beckett Sennecke is going to be that type of player in the NHL. For me, he started to rival with Berkly Catton and Tij Iginla. He's starting to flirt with it. I still have him in the lower end of my 5 to 10 range, probably at 9 or 10, something like that. But I still think that he's a decent pick at 5 and would be, again, a great fit for Montreal. They're looking for character. Clutch ability is a part of character. I haven't read much reports about how he is off the ice. I don't think there's really much out there to write about it. And I don't have the means to go to Oshawa myself, but that's coming soon. But overall, I just think that in terms of character, in terms of grit, physicality, he has that side to his game. And he plays really, really well defensively. He's a player who gets back, who makes back checks. And contrary to Tij Iginla, he's comfortable slowing down and identifying the lanes that he needs to be blocking instead of just barreling back down the ice. He can do both, though. He's able to back check hard. He's able to slow down and identify scenarios. So the hockey sense is there. The hands are there. The improvisational abilities there. I think that what Beckett Sennecke needs to work on to be a bona fide top 6 player is to add anticipation, to add predictive ability, the ability to read ahead, to see what's coming ahead, and to choose before like the second or two before he gets to the situation what he's going to do. Because all great improvisers in the NHL, the Patrick Kanes, those types of players, all good improvisers are also able to anticipate and predict. Sennecke can't do that yet, but I think that the moment he unlocks that, we're talking about a top 6 player. No problem at all. So that's our second segment about the likely scenarios at forward for Montreal. Now we'll get into the wild card picks finally in our third segment, but just before, a quick word from our sponsors at Game Time. If you're looking to buy cheap tickets last minute to any event, Game Time is the best place to secure them. Game Time is safe, secure, and really affordable. You get the best prices there, guaranteed by the app as well. And you get killer last minute deals, all in prices, reached from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets really easily. Myself personally, at 6 p.m. on a Saturday, my girlfriend was over at my place, and I just looked at her and said, let's go to a PWHL game. It was 6 p.m. The game started at 7. We went to a PWHL playoff game. The tickets cost us $30 each. By the time we got on the metro and got off at the station, the tickets were secured in both of our phones, ready to go. We scanned them, had a great time. The game got the third overtime, so we got our money's worth. So it's definitely worth your time. You should check it out. Last minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals, everything you want in terms of deals. They're obsessed with saving you money, and the Game Time guarantee makes sure that if you find tickets in the same section and row for less than what Game Time has to offer you, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, super simple. Just create an account, use code LOCKEDONNHL at checkout for $20 off. So download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Alrighty, so let's close things off here with the wild card pick. I've selected 3 selections that the Habs could make at the NHL draft table that would be really shocking, but would kind of make sense. We'll start off with Zayne Parekh at 5th overall. Personally, I like this one. If the Montreal Canadiens choose that the forwards they have available to them aren't to their liking, they want to go with the right headshot defenseman, because that's kind of the need right now. Outside of David Reinbacher and Logan Mailloux, they don't really have much that's NHL projectable. So I would say that Zayne Parekh would be the best option here, mainly because he brings an element that outside of Lane Hutson isn't too available for Montreal. And that's pure power play point scoring ability. And even with Lane Hutson, I think it's more likely that we're talking about Zayne Parekh as the first power play quarterback ahead of Lane Hutson in 5 or 6 years, because of how good Parekh's translatable offensive tools are. If you put Zayne Parekh on an NHL power play today, he would get a point per game. If we're talking power play only, if the NHL wasn't 5-on-5, if the NHL wasn't penalty killing, if it was just 60 minutes of power play, Zayne Parekh would be the best defenseman in the NHL probably today. Like his goal scoring ability, his vision, his awareness, the way that he sets up each puck touch with fakes, the way that he moves on the blue line, the way that he opens space, the way that he creates space for both himself and his teammates, all of that is NHL translatable. It would work in the NHL today. So yeah, if the NHL was just power play, like put Zayne Parekh in the NHL today, he'd be ready. Everything he does from that blue line is NHL translatable. I have no problem with it. The issue with Zayne Parekh, obviously, is defensive game. I don't think the issues are as overblown as it's been made out to be. I don't think the issues are horrible on his defensive side. And we saw that in the OHL playoffs and in the Memorial Cup. I saw a Zayne Parekh that was active defensively, that was putting his stick in the right lanes, that was getting into lanes with the right timing, who was closing the gap on rushing forwards really well. He was pinching time with good timing. He wasn't overcommitting. I saw a Zayne Parekh that's able to do the things that you look for from NHL defensemen. So I'm not concerned. Honestly, when it comes to Parekh's defensive game, I think the main issue is just learning to work on his engagement, his effort level, and a bit of translatability when it comes to in-zone defending. I mean, sometimes he does bear hug players and try to kind of stifle them along the boards rather than go for, layered stick and body checks. I think that can be worked on. That's an issue with kind of teaching him the right things and helping him develop in that element. The awareness is there. The ideas are there, especially off the rush. And again, his sense of timing is really good. And above all, with Zayne Parekh, what stands out is the composure. I don't think I can name you a more poised defenseman in this draft outside of maybe Zeev Bouillon. And Zayne Parech's right-handed, a bit taller, pretty much plays the same game playmaking-wise, but has a better shot and more translatable tools in the offensive zone. Zayne Parech's a no-brainer for me if the Montreal Canadiens are going for a right shot D. There's another option. We'll get into it in a second, and I'll also get into why I like it a bit less. But I do want to kind of separate the two by talking about Cole Eiserman for a second. And I know personally I've talked all year about the issues with Eiserman. He's got concerns with the defensive game. He's not a player who has the highest engagement. He takes shifts off. He, does rely a lot on his teammates to set him up in the right spots. Kind of struggles to find the right passing lanes, and when he does pass, he telegraphs them. He looks at his target the whole way. Doesn't really show a lot of deception. I mean, I could go on and on with the issues, but Cole Eiserman is the best goal scorer in this draft. that's the end of that. I mean, he's just still that good in terms of goal scoring ability. If anyone's going to score 50 goals in this draft, it's Cole Eiserman. He's got the shot both off the wrister, the backhand, slapper, snapshot, in stride, from a standstill, one timer, you name it. He's got it all. Don't worry about it. He's going to rifle the puck and he's going to put it in the top corner, and more often than not, it's going to go in. He's that good at goal scoring that I think that he could still be an interesting option for Montreal at 5. I wouldn't go that route personally. I think that Montreal does need a bit more grit, a bit more intensity, a bit more translatability, a bit more sureness in their top 6. They're looking for a bona fide top 6 player. I don't think that Cole Eiserman really fits that bill. I still think he's a decent option just if you're looking for pure upside, depending on who's gone by that spot. You really want a guy who's going to rifle the puck, another goal scoring option on your power play. Sure. I think what the Habs need more than anything, really, like I said, is a bit more intensity, a bit more physicality on the forecheck. They're a team that likes to create off of forecheck turnovers, and a team that is really missing a power play carrier. They have Kirby Dach, who's kind of capable. They have Nick Suzuki, who's been doing it so far, but I wouldn't really kind of keep him long-term in that situation. They need a bona fide puck carrier, which is why I mentioned Berkly Catton in our last segment as an option. That's why I don't think that Eiserman's really going to be the pick, but I still think he's interesting enough that he's worth a look at, or at least a consideration at 5th overall, depending on who's gone by that spot. Again, if you're looking for scorers, Cole Eiserman is the best one in this draft. It's just about how much you think you can fix his issues. Last but not least, I do want to talk about the other right-handed defenseman that could be an option at 5th overall, and it's Carter Yakimchuk. Big right-handed defenseman, 6'3", 200 pounds, who's playing for the Calgary Hitmen in the WHL. Scored 30 goals this season, but also put up 120 penalty minutes, I think 2 or 3 of which were fights. This is a physical player. This is a violent player. He loves to hit an open ice along the boards, and that's often how he's taking his penalties. Either that or just going too hard on a player in front of the net, hooking, cross-checking, that kind of stuff. A lot of aggression penalties. That kind of fits the bill with Yakimchuk because everything he does with aggression. He attacks players with a puck with aggression. He plays like a forward 99% of the time. He gets the puck, he dekes past one guy, dekes past the other, gets to the net, goes to the backhand, tries a wraparound. Like, he is all over the place when it comes to handling the puck. And he's one of the best stick handlers among defensemen in this draft. That aggression, it's not just that it needs to be reeled in, it needs to be eliminated at times. Like, there are times where he's just pushing a guy with no reason, leaving tons of space behind him, kind of like we saw from Jacob Trouba in these playoffs. And I think that would be an apt comparison. A more offensively skilled, less defensively skilled Jacob Trouba. How much do you want for that? I'm not sure. Would I go with him at 5th overall? I don't know. I'd say no, honestly. I'm not the biggest fan of that type of player, that kind of hyper aggressive, make mistakes but score a bunch of goals type of defenseman. But in terms of pure skill among defensemen, in terms of violence among defensemen, if those are the 2 criteria, and those seem to be the criteria when the Habs picked Logan Mailloux in 2021, which would be an apt comparison in terms of play style. It's a different scouting team. It's a different GM and coach now. I don't think they go for Carter Yakimchuk, but I did want to mention him as an option, as a wild card, if they do choose to go that direction. Among right-handed Ds that are available, it's really between Parekh and Yakimchuk, in my opinion. I'd be absolutely shocked if Artem Levshinov makes it out of the top 4. I'm pretty sure Chicago's going to pick him at 2. If Chicago doesn't pick him at 2, Anaheim's almost definitely going to pick him at 3. And if he's not picked at 3, Columbus almost definitely wants this type of player. He fits their bill. They picked Adam Yarchek a couple years ago. He's, basically the same player. So I wouldn't count on Levshinov being picked at 5. He would be my second favorite after Parekh for Montreal and what they're looking to build. If they go for a right-handed D at 5 and Levshinov's available, I would still slightly prefer Parekh, but the gap's closed a ton in the last couple of years. But that wraps things up for today's show. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, please remember to like and subscribe. Leave us a comment letting us know what you thought of the episode, who you think the Habs should pick at 5, and a lot more down below. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, make sure to make us your first listen of the day and leave us a rating and review. For your second listen of the day, make sure to check out Locked On Sports Today. They've got all your news and updates about sports on YouTube's first 24/7 sports channel. And make sure to tune in for our next shows as we continue our prospect coverage for the month of June and get ready for the 2024 NHL Draft coming on June 28th and 29th. Both Sebastian and I will be there giving you updates live on Twitter, so make sure to follow us as well. This has been Hadi, Director of North American Scouting for Dobber Prospects and co-host of the Locked On NHL Prospects podcast, and I hope you see us next time.